Kav Chof Hey Amud Aleph, right at the top of the Amud. We learned previously that Abai said that everyone is maida that by Kilaya Kerem that you're like Yafil Shloid Derachan Asa. Because the Torah over there by Kilayim doesn't say Achila. It says over there a Lashon of Pantikdash. It doesn't say a Lashon of Achila. And therefore, since it doesn't say a Lashon of Achila, then everyone is maida that you're like a derech, even if it's not in the normal way. So the Gemara asked the kasha from a brayso. Isa ben Yehuda said, how do we know that basar b'chalav is aser? The Torah doesn't say that basar b'chalav is aser b'achila. It says the lashon of bishul. You can't cook it together. It doesn't say achila that you can't eat it. So we learned out, it says over here, Kiyam Kodesh, and it says by Treifa, it says Anshe Kodesh Tiyunli. So just like over there, it's also Ba'achila. So here also, it's also Ba'achila. So therefore, we learn out in Isra Achila. Now, I only know Isra Achila. How do I know Isra Hana? We say Kal V'chaimer. Ma orla, that there is no avera done in its creation. A person planted, and the first 3 years of the fruit of the growth are also. But there's no isra done, and yet it's also bahana, basar b'chalav, where there's an isra that was done in the creation. The creation of basar b'chalav came through an isra by cooking them together, which is also. So kal v'chaimer, it should be asr bahana. So certainly, it should be asr bahana. So that's the brayso. Now, continuing on with it, the brayso says, Ma la orla shekein lo yahaisa la shasa kaisher. So the top of Chaf Hey Amud Aleph, Ma la orla, that there is no shasa kaisher. By orla, you're showing me, you're proving me it's from orla. That since orla, even though there is no isser in its creation, but nevertheless it's also b'hana kal v'chayra basar b'chalav. I'll show you no. I'll tell you no. That Ba'orla is more chomor because it never had a shasa kaisha. There was never a time that it was mutter. It was also from its inception. From the time that it grows right away, it's also. So, timer b'basar b'chalav, sh'haisla shasa kaisha. Basar b'chalav, the meat was mutter, the milk was mutter separately. That's only when it's brought together and cooked together that it became also. So, therefore, I'll tell you that Orla is chomer, and that's why there's an Isra Hana. So how can you prove that basar b'chalav should be awesome? So he says, okay, but chametz b'pesach yeichiach. I'll prove to you not that way, because from the case of chametz b'pesach, shehaya shasa kosher, it had a shasa kosher before Pesach. The chametz is muter, v'asar b'hana, and nevertheless comes Pesach, it's asar b'hana. So therefore, the fact that it had a shasa kosher doesn't have a bearing. Well, don't prove to me from chametz b'pesach, because the Pesach has a chumrah that there's a punishment for eating it is kares, is more chomer. Time of basar b'chalav she'eino is kares. There's no punishment of kares by basar b'chalav, of eating basar b'chalav. So therefore, don't ask me a kash from chametz. Chametz has its own chumrah. I'll show you not that way from Kilayim Aker. From Kilayim Aker, she'ein onish kares. There's no punishment of kares, v'asar b'hana, and it is asar b'hana. So the fact that it has a punishment of kares is not the determinant factor. Now, this is the brayso that we want to bring, and now from this we bring a kash on Abai. Abai wanted to say that whereby basar b'chalav everyone is maida that shechayev shloik derech because it doesn't say achila. Frankly, the Gemara v'im isa. Now, if it's true, as Abai says, that we get malchus for kilai kerem, even shloik derech, well, nifrach, the can ask a kasha malak kilai kerem shekain loikin aleim afil shloik derech hanasa. You can ask a kasha that it's true that Kalaya Kerem doesn't have the chumrah of kares, but Kalaya Kerem has a different chumrah, that Shalaikev and Shalaikederech. So from the fact that we didn't ask this kasha, and therefore we say that we don't have any additional chumrah by Kalaya Kerem, that shows you that this is not so. So doesn't that prove that Kilai Kerem does not have this Chumrah? Abaya answers no. Taimur b'mai. You say Kilai Kerem that has this Chumrah, that is Shaloika Derech, and therefore Taimar you'll say, and therefore how can you compare it? Compare it to what? Taimur to what? What are we talking about here? We're talking about learning out Basa B'cholav. Taimur Basa B'cholav Shein Loika Malam Derech Hanaasa. So you're going to say, how can you compare it to Basar B'cholav that you're only like when it's in a normal way, when it's Kederach Hanaasa? Also, B'Basar B'cholav Achila Ksibei. Basar B'cholav also it doesn't say Achila. The source to say that it has to be Kederach in the normal manner where the Torah says Achila. Achila in the normal manner. Now, Kalaya Kerem, it doesn't say Achila. So Abaya says, therefore, you're chayvim shloike derech hanaasa. Well, Basar B'cholav also doesn't say achila. So therefore, in the same reasoning, should tell you that Basar B'cholav you're also chayiv shloike derech. V'idach tekamaisiv, and the one who asked the kasha, no, he thought to be mechali. Savar lahachika gomer min avela. The reason why you learn out Basar B'cholav, reason why it's learned out from the vela. Now, even though it doesn't say achila by Basar B'cholav, but it's learned out from the Vela. The Vela is loidak, it really means treifa. You're learning out from treifa. So ma nevela derech hanaasa, by treifa it is kederech, because by treifa it says achila. So therefore ma derech is b'derech, it's kederech. Basar B'cholav derech hanaasa. If you're learning it out, even though by Basar B'cholav in itself it doesn't say achila, but if the source of it is from treifa, and treifa does say achila, therefore he says by Basar B'cholav it should also only be when it's kedarka, when it's kederech in the normal way, not in an abnormal way. The Ramchalva says that even though it says man nevela derech hanaasa, and really it's treifa, it's not nevela, and by treifa. And there's a lotion of achila, and there's no isra hano, and by nevela also there's no isra hano. There's no isra hano by nevela. But what it means to say is that madach over there, it's the isra that the Torah asers over there is the trade. The isra is kederech. The isra is only kederech. Basar B'cholav, the isra amar boy is kederech. The way the Torah answers it, what is the Torah answer? It is the Torah that the hano that it does answer over there is achila. So the hano that the Torah answers by Basar B'cholav is achila, is kederech achila. Abaya says, no, but the reason why it's true that you're learning out from Treifa, and Treifa says achila, but but the reason why it didn't write it, and by Basar B'cholav itself, it used only the loshon of leisavashal. It doesn't say the loshon of achila. It's to teach you that you're chayev afilu shaloike derech hanaasa. Practicing more will still. Lifrach, why doesn't he spend you to ask the following kasha? Why don't you ask Mala Kilai Kerem Shaloi Haisla Shasa Kaisha? Kilaim has a different chumrah. Yes, it doesn't have the chumrah of Kores, but it has a different chumrah. It has a chumrah that it never had a Shasa Kaisha. That Basar B'cholav, the meat was mutter, the milk was mutter, you cook them together, they also. But by Kilai Kerem, there was never a time when it was a mutter. From its inception, it was Kilai. Rabbi Ada Bar Hava, Zaysameres Kilai Kerem Ikra Nesorim. And thus must teach you that by Kilai Kerem, it's not only the growth that's awesome, it's also what's planted in the ground is awesome. And what's planted in the ground only becomes also when it takes root. So that part of it that's in the ground is mutter, has a shasa kaisha. It's mutter prior to taking root. Then it becomes awesome. So that also has a shasa kaisha. Massive Rav Shmaya. Rav Shmaya has a kash on this. Hamavir atzitz nokov aker. When we learn that a person is mavir atzitz nokov, a perforated pot. A pot that has a perforation, he's mavrit bekerem. So he passes it through, it has something growing in it, and he passes it through a vineyard. Im Haisif Masayim, also if it is a growth, a new growth that occurred from while it was in the vineyard, and if it has 1 part of 200, then it's awesome. Because then we say there is that amount that grew be'isr, that grew with kilayim, that part of it grew be'isr, and therefore it's that significant enough that it's not bottom. If there's more heter than this part of isr that grew together in the vineyard, then it would be bottom. But if there is that amount of the isr, Ma'asev Masayim, if it increased 1/200th, if there's 1 out of 200 in it, then it's awesome. If there's less than 1/200th of it, then it's bottle. But if there's 1/200th or more that grew be'isr, then it's awesome. So haisifin, loy haisif loy. If it's only if it had that additional growth. But if it didn't have the additional growth, then we see that it's mutter. Therefore, you see that it's only the growth that's osir. It's only what grows that's osir. It's not the root that's osir. It's only what grows. It's only the haisif, what is now increased, what grows together in kilayim. But what doesn't grow together is mutter. There's 2 psukim. It's ksiv hazera or ksiv hamalea. The pasuk says, "Le'sizra karmacha kilayim pen tikdash hamalea hazera asher tizra." So malea means that which is grows. Malea means that it's a growth, and azera means that which is planted. So there are 2 isurim in kilayim. There's that which is planted, which is in the ground, that's also, and what grows is also awesome. Okay, so if something was already planted, it's planted from its inception, it becomes also when it takes root. But if something is planted, then it's not planted in the kilayim. It's zaruah. It was planted somewhere else, like the case by the Altzas Nok. Then haisifin, it's only the growth. Haisifin, loy haisif loy. So there's really 2 issues. There is there's a malaya, but there's also a zer. If you plant it together, you take something and plant it as kilayim, then we say it's also even from in the ground. Once it takes root, hashrosha, it's awesome. If something is planted beheter, so the root isn't awesome, what becomes awesome is the growth, what it grows in kilayim. So therefore, the growth is kilayim, and only what grows, because it was a root, it was planted beheter. So like the case of the Altzas Noku, it was planted beheter in the pot outside the vineyard. It was brought, the perforated pot was brought into the vineyard. Now what grows, what's planted, it was not biser, but what grows is biser. So if in Haisif Masayim, if there is 1 part of 200 that is grew biser, then it's also. Then the growth, that's a significant amount of growth, which is also. So now the Gemara has a different topic now of discussion. A person can be misrap, can heal himself with even things which are also bahano, chutz me'atzei asher, with the exception of the wood of an asherah tree, a tree that was served as a avodah zarah. Except for that tree, that you cannot use it for refuah. What are the circumstances? If you tell me that the person says zakonis nefashos, and if he doesn't use this, he'll endanger his life, then I feel then even as nami, it's bikuch nefashos. If there's no sakana, I feel nami, then it's something which is also ba'ana. Other Yisurim as well. You can't get hana from Yisur hana. So what's the chilek between Asherah and other things? The Gemara answers, Lo elam dika sakana, really, I'll tell you that there's a sakanas nefashos. So therefore, other things which are also b'hana, but it doesn't stand in the phase of sakanas nefashos. So even though it's also b'hana, but for sakanas nefashos, it would be mutter. So Lo elam dika sakana, va'afilo hachi atzay Asherah loy, but nevertheless, Atzei Asherah is also even if there's a kanas nefashos. And it's all, even here it's also the Sanya Rebbe Eliezer Omer. It says Im Nemar B'chol Nafshecha. It says you have to serve Hashem B'chol Nafshecha. So it says B'chol Nafshecha Lama Nemar B'chol Moedecha. V'im Nemar B'chol Moedecha Lama Nemar B'chol Nafshecha. Why does it say? Doesn't that imply both the same things? You have to serve Hashem to the maximum, to the utmost. So why does it say Nafshecha Moedecha? So to teach you the following. So if a person whose life is more precious to him than his money, then so he has to serve his Hashem with what is most precious to him, with what is most precious to him, and therefore it says it says that's what's most precious to him. Adam, and a person that his money is more important than his life, meaning if he has money, if he doesn't have money, he doesn't want to live. He only wants to live if he has wealth. So for that type of a person, it says that's what's most precious to this person, and he has to serve Hashem with all of his money. Therefore, we see that a person has to give up his life for Avodas Hashem. And Avodah Zorah is being machish. That's showing that he believes in Avodah Zorah. So therefore, Asherah is different than other Yisur Hano. Over here, by getting Hano from the Asherah, it's Ki'ilu, he's Moida in the Avodah Zorah. And he has to give up his life for Avodas Hashem. So therefore, even though it's a Sakonis Tafashos, he can't get Hano from the Asherah. There's a Machlokes Rishonim how to understand this. Taisus says that we're talking over here, that we're talking about, then Rashi is Samash in the same way. We're talking where by getting Hana from the Asherah, it's like he's Moida to the Asherah. Therefore, Taisa says that we're talking where other trees, you can't get Hana, you can't get Refuah rather from other trees. Other trees will not give Refuah. For some reason, there's a curative power in this particular tree, which is a Natsei Asherah. And therefore, Taisa says, perhaps like they shade him, or some davar acher, but whatever the case may be, for some reason, this tree is only one that he can heal himself from. Therefore, people might come to assume that there's something, that there's a koyach in the Avodah Zorah. They'll come to attribute the power and special powers to Avodah Zorah, and they'll come to be Maida in the Avodah Zorah. So therefore, you can't get Hanor from this Asherah tree. You can't be Misrape, rather, from this Asherah tree. But if there are other trees that will also provide Hana, then people won't attribute this to a special power to the Avodah Zorah, and therefore that it would not be asur in such a case. The Ran says even in such a case it's asur because it says by Avodah Zorah, it says lo yidbak b'cha mu'uma min acherem, and you can't have anything attached to you. So therefore, no part of this Avodah Zorah, this cherem, can be attached to you, and therefore, even if they won't attribute, people won't attribute necessarily to a koyach Avodah Zorah, you have to distance yourself totally and completely from Avodah Zorah, and therefore can't get hanoah even in such a case where there's a zakonis tafashos.